Hello, and welcome to the Horror Grill at Christmas. How are you? Are you all well? Give everybody a little minute to come on board. Tonight I'll be talking to the wonderful Marcus Hawke. I'm a huge fan. He knows that. But yeah, he'll be here long in a minute, hopefully. If he hasn't forgotten, because it's like 3 o'clock in Canada, isn't it? He's probably having afternoon tea. He's probably having scones and cream. Is he? I don't know. How have you all been? Are you all right? It's a very, very cold in Devon. And yeah. So I've just been, trundling around, getting stuff done. Work's a bit manic. But yes, this is the last Horror Grill of the year. And yeah, hopefully you'll be along in a minute. Hopefully. So, hello. Is your name Wendy? What a wonderful name. I used to go to school with a girl called Wendy, and she was fantastic. But yeah, so just waiting for people to arrive. And here's Marcus. Hello, darling. So I just need to figure out how to invite you. Thank you. Yeah, it's nice to meet you too, my darlings. Hopefully a few more people will join, but I'll be posting this everywhere in a minute. It'll be all over TikTok and YouTube. Hello!
Well, you figured out how to invite me before I did.
Oh, well, yeah, it's more luck than judgment, to be honest.
Well, there you go. Isn't that true?
Hello!
Hello.
It's lovely to speak to you.
You too. This is the first time. Yeah, I know. This is the first time we've,
in person.
Live, or yeah, in real time.
Oh, it's lovely to finally speak to you, my darling. I am a huge fan of Marcus's, and he knows this. I adore him. I adore his writing. I've got every single one of his books. So I'm very pleased to invite him to have a little chat. This is very informal. I am not a very formal person. I'm quite chatty.
One way or the other, it's going to be informal when I'm involved. I promise you that.
Me too.
Yeah.
So in case you don't know, Marcus is an indie author, specialises in horror. Yeah, so I've even got his first book.
Oh my
his
God.
First short story, Bumpy in the Night.
Calling that a book is generous, considering you could fit it through between pages of another book. But thank you.
Story, though. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
Dead of Night, which is all vampire horror, fantastic acts of violence, which the last story in this book is one of my favourite stories you've ever written. I love it.
Yeah.
October Blood, which is brilliant for Halloween horror, but you can read it at any time.
Thank you for everyone who's checked that one out, because it's all the proceeds go to charity, and I just checked out that it's getting close to $1,000 since it's been released, so that's fantastic.
It's beautiful, gorgeous cover. That's proper Halloween vibes, isn't it? That orange.
That was the idea.
The last release before the new one, The Axe Remembers, which is one of the best eco horrors you'll ever read. It's brilliant and proper slashery vibes, but with a bit of folkloric mythology behind it. Brilliant. And recently,
that one.
You sent me this. Thank you so much.
I did.
You deserved it. Look at this cover. It's stunning.
When I saw the final piece for that from the artist, the brilliant, also Canadian artist named Robert Carter, I told him it just made my day better.
It's basically a vampire Scrooge. Look at him. I mean, he's just incredible.
That was essentially the main goal, I think.
And it very much has that kind of vibes. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of Christmas Carol meets Oliver meets Dracula. Do you know what I mean? But in a very 80s where, greed was everything. And it really does hit on those kind of themes of Be careful what you wish
where
for.
that stopped in the 80s. From then on, it's been nothing but altruism just across the board.
Yeah.
You know what you mean? That was when the greed was, it was the avarice was naked. I think that was,
It was honest.
Then they just
It was honest.
tried to dress it up a little bit better.
So to start off, obviously, I can't believe I forgot this. One of my favorite books of all time.
Oh, it's easy to forget that one just because it takes such an effort to pick it up,
I mean, this could be used as a weapon. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
You could take it easy. It's also the best religious horror I've ever read.
You're gonna give me a big head, and I've already got a big head, so
No, I don't think so, my darling, because it is what it is. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's massive for a horror book, and yet it reads so quickly that you don't realise it's just incredible. And I just saw your post to say you finished the second miracle scene.
I have, which
is incredible.
You have seen a little bit of, haven't you?
I have, yeah. Just one story.
That's all that was that's all that was presentable at the time. So I wanted some thoughts on it. So yeah, it's now finally it's finished, and now like I like to say, now all that's left to do is everything.
Everything.
Yeah.
So you got to edit it and all the rest of it. Everything.
It's got to be made presentable to go to grandma's, Yeah.
Absolutely looking forward to that. Can't wait. So let's start off. So tell us a little bit about you. Where are you from and why you started writing?
Earth, I think. I'm originally from Toronto, Ontario, which is, I think most people who don't really know Canada too well will know that.
Yeah.
And I moved to Calgary 23 years ago and just kind of been stuck here ever since, I guess. It's all right. It's just, we won't get into that. But what were the other questions? Focused on
tell us a bit about you. What's your background? Have you always written, or was you plan?
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, funnily, I mean, probably at least as far back as high school. I didn't always do great in everything, but the thing that I easily did the best with was creative writing, which I finished. I graduated high school with a 95, which still bothers me to this. Well, it's my own fault, but I mean, it would have been 98 because that's what it was at before. And I turned in my last assignment late, which is part of the course for pretty much everything. But yeah, that and English were easily my best things. Best subjects. Yeah, right. Math. Once they started throwing letters in with the numbers, I was like, you lost me, guys. I don't know.
I love maths as well. I'm an accountant, so I love numbers too. But
there you go.
English, literature, and creative writing were always my favourite subjects at school. It's just like use your imagination, isn't it?
I think sometimes you have to, because every once in a while you take a look around and you're like, yeah, I think I'm going to come up with something else.
The real world's not fun.
It's again, we don't need to talk. But it's I mean, sometimes it just kind of takes on its own life, like when you can't. People ask, like, what would you be doing if you didn't do this? Honestly, I don't know, because I mean, things just occur to me. They don't leave me alone, and the only way to sort of soothe that is, give it a little bit of a rub, is to look at it, to exercise it, to flesh it out. Otherwise, I think it go
you go mad.
Little loco.
Right, I think it's just like that's what they do. It's like it tickles your brain until you get it out, right?
Yeah. That's a good way of looking at it. Tickles it till you pee.
So you've written since you were little, but when did you decide to publish? Because it's a big jump, isn't it?
Yeah. Well,
I'm not brave enough to publish anything.
no, it. Neither am I. Just foolish and stubborn enough. I, I I really started to make an effort for it. I think when, funnily enough, after I stopped drinking, I'm a recovering alcoholic. So
Me too.
once I had, yeah. Well, congrats, and you know, good
Good on
on you and
both.
both of us. Yeah, for sticking it out that long. It's not that easy, but yeah. Once I got that out of the picture, I wound up both with a lot of time on my hands and a lot of things
Brain
to
things.
say. Apparently, yeah. So that was really so around, you know, a little bit beforehand too. But I mean, that was really when I started to make a push for it. But I think the first time I found actually the first story I ever submitted, and it was dated 2008, and
Wow.
yeah, so quite a while ago now. So yeah, just really around 2009, 10, 11, that was really when I started getting things, and that was before social media was
Yeah.
around, but that was when I started to do it all by email and, just trying to feel, not quite the old school way. Like, I mean, the first story I ever submitted, I actually did send by mail. That's how far back that goes.
That's it.
That, I mean, I think there was the option to not do it then, but I did it just because it felt official and whatever, right? But yeah, it was in an actual envelope with a stamp and everything. Yeah.
Still something lovely about receiving something through the mail. Do you know what I mean? I got a card and a letter today, and they could have very easily sent me an email or an email card, but there's something incredibly wonderful about touching something.
Well, I mean, it tells us that something's real, right? If you can't,
Yeah.
if you know, that's why I think every time we see our paychecks, it's like it seems ephemeral almost. It's
Yeah.
like, but when you actually get a check in the mail, which I've gotten actual checks in the mail from like in-store appearances and things,
Yeah.
and that feels real. And I'm like, you know what? I'm happy to go to the bank and have to put it in an envelope and cash it and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
you started your own publishing company, Hawke. Was that a decision? So that was that how did you come to that
It
decision? Really, what?
was a it was one it was one sort of made out of necessity, really. At the time, I'd really only had one other thing out at the time, which was my first book, and that was through another press that doesn't exist anymore. So
That's a surprise. There's so many of them gone now.
yeah, for one reason or another too. It's either it's yeah. I, we don't need to get into that, but uh,
Yeah,
that's going to be my.
there's a lot
That's
of drama around that at the moment.
unfortunately, yes. But either way, it was a press that doesn't exist or that didn't exist after a while. So I had to make my own mark, so to speak, and that's. I don't tend to see it too much like a publishing company. I mean, I think anyone who's self or indie published is like their own, company sort of unto themselves. But yeah, it's more of just the way I see it, a personal brand and whatnot. And I thought if there was anything I wanted to do, like the anthologies, then that way I have that stamp to put on it, and the horror reading journals, which have been popular. So yeah, just anything like that.
I've got that, but I don't know what I've done with
I
it.
know, I know you do, and that's again, I don't know. I don't. There's probably nothing of mine you don't have, but
Is this true? I'm a super fan.
you might have things that I don't have at this point because I've either misplaced them or just gotten rid of them all,
Do you know?
or whatever.
You
So
know what? I'll tell you what it is, Marcus. What I love about your writing is that it 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 moves me, right? So when I read it, and a lot of the stuff is very very different to each other, but the writing is it just makes me feel something. And for me, reading is It's not only something that I enjoy to do because I love to read stories, I love finding stories, but I want the vibes. I want it to make me feel, because that's what art is, right? Even if it makes you feel complete disgust, should make you feel something,
That
right? And
I
you,
think that's all you can ever really hope to do as a writer or as any kind of creative anything, whether it's music or whatever, is to make people feel something.
yeah,
If you
yeah,
if they could, if they put it down and just sort of, it doesn't make any kind of mark on them, then either you've not done your job, or the mixture wasn't right, one or the other. So I
yeah.
think
And you're
that's
right,
that's all
really
I want to hear.
incredibly complex, morally ambiguous characters. I love a morally ambiguous character. I love somebody who's slightly grey, and you write them so well. Virtually all of your books have someone in them who you kind of like, but you kind of don't. You
Yeah,
kind, but you kind of don't. You
I
think what you know what they're going to do, but you don't. And
I
I
think
kind of
that's
like that. I
yeah.
like that.
I think that's just to. I mean, I don't even know if that's something I try to do or if it just happens that way because I see things so in so many. I think we're all diamonds in that we all have different facets, right? Even if it's not something that we always show others,
Yeah,
or even ourselves. So once you get a once you delve into things a little bit, you find out that everybody's kind of a bit gray. You know,
we all are.
that's not just yeah. Even if it's not something that we act on, we all think. Somebody cuts us off in traffic. You start fantasizing about dropping them off a cliff. That sort of thing. It's
Well,
just
I don't drive, so if somebody cut me off in traffic, I'll be dead. But I,
or
I
in
understand.
front of you know, or butts in line,
Yeah.
or
Well,
anything like that, right? But
they don't do that in England. They'd be killed if they tried to jump a line in England.
I thought that was only if you spell color without a U,
Um, well, that's
which
yeah,
you might get
certainly.
killed for here too. I'm terrible. You know what? I've had other, like, just from like writing comments and things online. I've had other Canadians come to me and say, "What kind of Canadian are you? You spell color without a U and all this stuff," because we do that here. But honestly, it's just something I've acclimated to from reading a lot of American fiction and things like that.
I think we're all kind of very cross cultural, aren't we? Really,
Mm.
I think that it's because we're all, same here. We watch a lot of American shows and shows from all over the world, and it's the same over there. I think. Um, so I think you do pick it up. It doesn't bother me. Sometimes things are not, I like in America they say ladybug instead of ladybird,
Hmm.
which is bird in this country, and that's
Yeah,
the only thing that slightly annoys me if I read it in a book, and I don't know why, because it's not a big thing, but it really grates on my nerves.
it's it's. I mean, and I've read a lot of uh, you know books written from the UK as well, so I'm familiar with a lot of them. But every once in a while, I'll pick up on some term, and for like when I found out what a lollipop man, I was like, "What? What sense does that make?" But I mean, what sense does a pineapple make? We're the only, honestly, in any other language in the world, you look up how they say pineapple, it's anana or ananas or some variation, and then you get to English and it's pineapple.
It's crackers.
Go figure. I
Oh,
know it does.
that's the joy, isn't it, of
Yeah,
words? Though the joy of language is
it
that
is.
it changes so much.
Yeah, the weird,
But
wonderful
we are
thing.
indeed. What you got on your cup?
Troy and Abed in the morning.
Is that the?
Community?
Is that your like? No. Is it what?
Yeah,
Is-
it's from a show called Community.
Oh, I
It's
don't know that.
not. Yeah, it's been off the air for a while now, but it was. Why? It's got a bit of a cult following now, but it's, yeah, basically a group of very mismatched people who go to a community college. And it was one of those shows that, honestly, a friend of mine at work, actually the friend who's the basis for the character of Diaz,
Ah,
in the Miracle Sin, he he pressed, like, he made a push for me to watch that show, and I was like, okay, it doesn't look that great. He said, no, just trust me and check it out. I should have listened sooner because it's so weird
Angel.
and quirky and meta and just all kinds of, you know, everything that was just right up my alley, and pop culture references and things like that. And yeah, as soon as as soon as I saw it, it was just
Yeah, Sue in the comments is
unmatched.
saying she loves it. I've never heard of it. I must try
There
and
you
look
go.
it up.
Yeah, there's that Greendale. Go human beings. That's their their school mascot, the Greendale Human Beings, because they couldn't decide on one for one reason or another. It was,
So what inspires you, my darling? What sort of horror writers, horror books do you like, or
oh
generally do you like?
well, I mean, so the two that probably started that. I mean, I like to say that if Stephen King planted the seed, which he did when I read Pet Cemetery,
Yeah,
then the one who really gave it water and sun and allowed it to grow was Anne Rice. Because once I discovered her work, that was really when I went, I want to do this. I want to be able to do like what this is making me feel. I want to be able to, you know, create and be able to impart on into others. So those two for sure. I'm afraid. I'm sorry to say that I've only or not recently actually. But Clive Barker. I read Mr. Be Gone years
yeah,
ago. I
yeah.
liked it, but I don't think it was so much that I was like, well, I have to keep going with this, and that's unfortunate because once I read The Hellbound Heart, which was like a year ago or 2 years ago now, it was I've never been so instantly
And
in love with a book in my life. It was just incredible. He has a way of describing things that is it makes you it makes you want to look into it. It makes you want to like go how did he do this? How did he think about this? And spend the rest of your life just aim, aiming for that sun and falling flat on your face probably.
he's
But um,
a fascinating man as well because I met him a couple of times. I'm a huge Clive Barker fan. I've since I was a kid. Um,
lucky you. Yeah.
he's a fascinating man because he's quite. You meet him and he's just like Joe Normal. Do you know what I mean? And you read his stuff and you expect. And I suppose it's the same with you. I suppose to a certain degree, and other horror writers I really love. You're all quite normal, really. Well, normalish. Well,
That's what we
normalish.
want you to think.
But you know what I mean? He's a very polite. He's a
Yeah,
gentleman. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
And some
yeah.
of the stuff he Wade is so dark.
I've
Um,
met like I've met I've never I haven't met any other writers, I don't think, and I don't think I've ever met any musicians, but I've met a number of different actors and people from geek and pop culture and things like that. And honestly, I haven't met a single one that I had a bad time with or was like, well, he was different than I expected or anything or anything like that. It was yeah, it's at conventions I think they're probably on their best behavior. You're not going to see somebody with their head in the toilet or anything like that, but
I think
it's
horror certainly. I know obviously a lot of indie horror authors, especially in the UK, but sometimes outside as well. But and we had our first convention this year, do you know, and um, I think it's because you all write such dark stuff that you kind of get it out your head, so it leaves you being, in the words of Doctor Who, it leaves you being kind. I mean,
yes.
you know what I mean? Because you kind of tap into the darkest sides of humanity and get it out. So he just leaves behind very loving and kind people.
That,
In my experience, I mean, I'm sure there's some who are complete idiots, but the ones that I've met, certainly, without exception, have been really just lovely human beings. Do you know what I mean?
I think that's very much. I absolutely think that's why, and it'd be nice if that was something that like you could just do it once and then that's it. But no,
Yeah,
you kind of have to
you really
practice it and
do it
keep at it. But that is, yeah, like essentially
right.
that is why and I think that's something that is really in general just the quality behind horror or anything that's seen as dark or macabre or alternative or anything like heavy music or anything like that is that's what people are doing in order in order in order to be normal, in order to seem kind and sane and whatever, because I think it can really overtake you sometimes, the things of that nature. And it's if you don't, like I like to say, if you don't deal with them, they'll deal with you.
It's a safe space. I find horror generally,
Yeah.
like I find alternative music, heavy metal, same kind of thing. It's a safe space to kind of deal with those darkness in us. You
Mm,
know what I mean? Very
yeah.
safe space to deal with it and kind of face up to it. Because it's the same in the alternate music scene. Majority of people are like that, aren't they?
Yeah.
I love Anne Rice, although I did read Sleeping Beauty, and I was so shocked. Have you read? Don't read it.
What, the original German folk tales, Sleeping Beauty?
No, Anne Rice wrote a trilogy of books based on Sleeping Beauty,
Oh,
and
I
I
know. I know of those.
think
Yeah.
Interview with a Vampire takes on Fairy Tale. No,
That's
no,
yeah.
I'm just.
I I
I
I
was like,
know.
what were you thinking?
I I don't know much about them. I just know that it's somewhat more BDSM meets yeah
It's
Disney essentially.
extreme. It's extreme. And I was just so, it was so complete. I love Interview with the Vampire. It's one of my favorite books, and it was just so different. I was like, oh well, fair play to her. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, I think it's the
For
only
me,
book I've ever picked up by DNF'd.
when it um so like I mean I started with those books. Funnily enough, with the books themselves, I started with the second
Somebody
one, and I
wants to know about it in the comments. I'm like, you want to check it out?
what's
I think
that?
if
Oh,
you watch, yeah, the page turning thrills. If you like smart, you will love it. Yeah,
just reading some of these
yeah.
comments now.
Oh yeah, I keep forgetting about the
Oh,
comments. You know.
I thought that's what you were referring to.
Yeah, I just see the ones that come up. Yeah, so it's just like
Um, I forget what I was saying. That's okay.
and rock. It doesn't matter.
Oh, yeah. Oh no, just yeah, because I had already seen. I mean, I knew like the longest time passed before I knew that Interview with the Vampire, and at the time Queen of the
Yeah.
Damned, because the movie came out when it did, that those two were the same character because it was a different actor, a different story, all that stuff. And then I decided to start in the middle with the Vampire Lestat, and that's actually, funnily enough, if people don't, for whatever reason, want to read the first book, you can start with the second one. That's one of the very rare instances where you can actually kind of start, because it sort of starts anew with Lestat as the not quite protagonist, but main character at least. But that was really when things took off, because then it becomes so like those next 3 to 4 books are just rich with. I'm not even sure what else to call it, but like a horror adventure. Like it's almost an odyssey that it goes through, like through time and
It's an adventure story. It is
time.
absolutely.
Essentially, yeah. Like it's in and yeah, with all like lots of recurring characters and things. It's almost like the Marvel cinema, the Marvel movies, in like that. There's you can shift the camera to another character and then another one comes in, and it's sort of it's really cool actually. Yeah, I love them all. I was very sorry and sad when she passed away.
And
Um,
she made a comment. She sent you a comment or something that encouraged you, right?
yes, was that was a great day in my life. Just yeah, I think just because at the time I was on Facebook quite a bit, and I was really really frustrated with like how long I had been submitting stories and things with no headway at all, which is common, right? But I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, at some point you start to get a little
Just
exhausted with it all,
understand that.
and yeah, and she'd posted some news story at the time about someone who wrote One Direction fan fiction, to each their own, uh, getting a book deal, and I was like, well, what am I doing wrong? Like, what do I have to do here? And or however whatever I said, and she was lovely enough to have commented saying that just basically
Keep going.
keep at it. If she can do it, you can. Basically don't quit. Don't. That's something I've found as well. Is like honestly the only way to guarantee failure is if you give up.
Don't. Yeah, don't do it.
Just
Absolutely. And I think it is.
You never know what can happen.
It can be discouraging because it's like everybody, everybody is famous for 15 minutes to suddenly bringing a book out and suddenly gets a publishing deal. It can be very discouraging, can't it?
Yeah, it's easy to get discouraged. It's hard to stick it out, and then even when you do get that one thing, then it's it that doesn't last forever. You have to kind of keep at it, and it was another 2 years before I had a story published after the first one. But that's the point, I think, is like even when you just get a little, just a little, like it's not going to be just wall to wall success with each thing that you do, but the times that you do, it really carries you forward. You know what I mean?
So I'm going to talk about your newest release.
Sure.
If I'll take it with you. I was very fortunate enough to read this for Marcus, and he kindly sent me a copy. I love this book. It's got such gothic. I've been stuck. I'm sorry. People in the comments are going to tell me off for damaging a book. I didn't. It came like that.
Once people have the book, they can do what they want with it.
It's got the most beautiful wintry vibes. You could read it anytime, but it feels cold. It's set in 80s New York. What made you decide to we'll do a small synopsis on it first. This is about a 90-year-old man called Monty, who is very, very wealthy and lives in a penthouse in New York, and with his nurse companion called Brenda.
Yeah. I see her sort of as, if you watch Frasier ever, she's sort of like the Daphne, Yeah.
And Muffy the cat, who I love. And he decides it goes through his life. It's a journal of his life in a way, of all the things he's been through, and the sadnesses, the ups and downs, the losses, the wins. And it turns out many years ago he bought something for a lot of money that he's going to do to himself so that he doesn't die. And that's basically, this is the story. It's got beautiful gothic vibes. The writing is gorgeous. It flows really beautifully. It's got immaculate 80s nostalgic vibes. What made you choose New York in the 80s?
Well, New York, I chose. I don't know if you read the afterword at all, but it does go a little bit into that. No, that's fine. If you, I'll just revisit some of that. But New York, reading a lot of this, I was sort of, this year I was going over a lot of things, like looking back at how quickly 10 years seemed to pass, and I turned 39 for the second time this year, so it was a lot of that. And one of the best times I had, I remembered, like just in that time span, was going to New York for my 30th birthday in 2014, and it was just amazing. It was like I love New York. I've been fascinated with it since I was a kid, and just always wanted to go, and then I finally did for the first time that year. So that was kind of part of it. Setting it in 1984 was because that was the year I was born.
That was,
and
yeah.
I actually got. Oh, I can't roll my sleeve up. Hang on. Let's see if I can show you. But I actually got that. That's 1984 in Roman numerals, just to sort of commemorate things. And yeah, that was essentially where that all came from.
I mean, I was in New York in the 80s, so
you told me. You were definitely my authenticity reader.
Yeah, I spent a lot of it, drunk, but I do remember some of it.
I don't remember.
Stu is saying she loves the cover. Paige Turning Thrill said it's wonderful, really enjoyed the book. Sue says she likes the same shows. What a great name, Umley.
right?
She's the third way through this book and loving it. Sue says, I love when stories happen in the 80s. They're awesome memories. They are. I was a teenager and a young adult in the 80s, and it's still my favourite decade to remember.
That's funny. Like, it's just funny to me how strongly that decade has been explored in fiction and stuff, because I remember when there was a point in time when the 70s was the thing, right? Like there was that 70s show and Dazed and Confused and just all that sort of coming out at the same time, and now it's shifted to the 80s. So eventually that will subside too, and it'll move on. I honestly don't. I'm going to start. I'm like, I might need to start taking antidepressants when we start getting into the the 90s and the early 2000s, when that's like, nostalgizing that. I'm gonna.
It's terrifying because said to me the other day, we were talking about that it was like 40 years since Live Aid, and I went to Live Aid in London.
Oh,
That's a long time
you're
ago,
like
right?
Forrest Gump. You've been to all these.
I haven't really, but
Uh,
I didn't pay for a ticket. Me and my friends, we dug in under the fence. We couldn't afford a ticket. But anyway, aside from that, somebody said to me that it was 40 years ago since then. So that means in the 1984 that it was 1985 was Live Aid, but 1984 was the same distance now away as 1984 was from World War II.
sadly, yes.
And that is what makes you realise the passage of time. I mean, I'm in my mid-50s. I'm still in my mid-50s. I'm only 55. I'll be in my late 50s next year. But,
That's the way it works.
the passage of time, you don't realise it because in your head, you don't age. In my head, I'm still 20.
In my
body.
age, I don't know how many times I think that, I need to ask a grown up about this or whatever. Like, I don't,
the grown up.
Then I look in the mirror and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm the grown up. Great.
Surprise me when I have to make decisions and I think, oh, I should ask somebody else something. I've got to ask myself, and that's a really unsafe place to be. I feel
Can
be. It's terrible, really.
Yeah.
But it's a fantastic book, my darlings. It's brilliant for the winter, brilliant for any time, and it has, as I say, it's very Christmas Carol. I just love this cover so much. It's so beautiful.
I wonder if you picked up on this too, because there was one aspect of it I wanted to bring up if you hadn't. But it's roughly, it's not exactly structured in the same equal amounts, but roughly the first third focuses largely on the past.
Yeah.
The next roughly third focuses on the present, and then the last bit, the future. So much like the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future.
And it is set up.
Not an accident.
Yeah, it does. And also, if anybody, hi Shelley, if anybody has read Miracle Sin, there is a little.
They're connected very, very loosely, but it's set in the same universe, just at a different time, different events, different characters. It's like, if you might, you'll see a mention to, a group or something that happened, that sort of thing. It's that kind of connection, very loose. It's got nothing actually to do with the two things. But like I said, you never know. You might see people, you might see characters from the one appear in the other.
It's a very, very bold vampire take on vampires, I think. And I think that's what you do when you take on these kind of things, is they come from a very, very different angle. In this, it's all about greed and immortality and, a decadence and the loss of humanity. And it's actually a really different way of looking at vampires. And I love that, because we, as horror readers, we all love vampires, don't we? We do. We do. I don't like the ones that sparkle, but I like.
We don't need to talk about them.
They're vicious.
No, again, people like those, and that's fine. But yeah, I I really like when vampires are brutal. You know,
Me
like
too.
one of the things that was an relatively early on example or you know source of love for vampires was John Carpenter's vampires,
Oh
and
yeah.
they're terrible in that. They like very not unlike what you might you might or might not see, but there's limbs torn off and put through the ceiling and just all kinds of stuff. It's
Because
terrible.
that's what they are.
It's great.
It's the completely feral part of your nature that without soul, right? So if you go from
Mm.
the strict biology, without soul and having to survive on human or blood, right, would make you completely feral and animalistic. And so that feels far more real to me than this kind of a romantic image we have of vampires. Um, you know what I mean? I wouldn't want to be alone in a room with one. You know what I mean? At
I
it from a very different point of view, where he's purposely choosing it without actually realizing what it means,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and that's so. I mean, that was something that I explored myself because obviously I say I would like to be a vampire, but would I?
Yeah,
Because I mean, it would be great. You wouldn't have to worry about time or getting sick or dying or
yeah,
wouldn't really have to do much of anything except for just exist. But when you think about what would that what would the cost of that be? And also, I love the nighttime,
yeah,
but
me too.
it this time of year that always reminds me how much too much of a good thing there is,
Yeah,
because there's
no,
it feels like there's an hour of daylight and then
yeah,
you know 23 hours of darkness. That's just about it. Like so I think after a while that would do that. It sort of in a way sort of just you know not directly, but tries to sort of at least kind of explore what might make them so bad, so to speak, so monstrous. And I mean, if you didn't see anything but darkness for eternity, there
never watching a
that
sunrise.
alone.
The thought of that, I've never seen a sunrise or a sunset, or never been able to walk on grass in the daylight. I mean, just the things that make us very human, those kind of very beautiful
And
touches in the world.
and
That
then there's that too, which is also meant to people who you know don't know a lot of love or kindness or anything like that. you know it's easy to look at people and say like they're bad or they're it's a terrible person or whatever, but who knows what they've been through, who knows, and it's just that's not to excuse certain things. I mean, like there's there are terrible people in the world, but it's more to just sort of it's more like accident assessment than anything else,
yeah,
just to say like if this is what someone's exposed to, how can you expect anything
yeah.
less?
I like your vampires because they're vicious.
That's what I go
Do you
for.
know, what's horror without a little bit of gruesome gore? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I do like. I do like that.
Carnal animals, someone
Carnal
said.
animals. That's
Yeah.
what they are.
Oh, thank
They
you. Yeah.
they basically are. They live in
No
completely
sparkly
on the
vamps allowed.
vamps allowed. Who's was that? Sue. I bet Sue said that. Yeah.
I, I tried, I've really honestly tried to class those ones as vampire. It's really like there's certain things where if you take away certain aspects, you go, is that really what it is anymore? So if you take away them dying in the sun, not sleeping, not having fangs, and not drinking human blood, what are they? Essentially, they're large wingless fairies. That's the best I've been able to actually classify them. Like, but again, if that's what you like, that's what you like. That's fine. It's, to point at something and say, that's a duck. It's like, well, it's not a duck because it doesn't have wings or, feathers or
It's
a beak.
kind of dulling down what they are. To me, it's kind of it's dulling them down so that they're more palatable to more people.
Yeah, it could be that. Yeah, I mean,
Oh, what are
but
you
you know what? Like, I think that try things, do
doing?
different. It's, I like, I don't ever want to say that people can't try things out or experiment or whatever, because you get some really great things when you try that out. Honestly,
Yeah.
when I curated the stories for Dead of Night, I found such a variety
Yeah.
of vampires, both in, from the very, very traditional to things that I was like, you know what? Like, I never would have thought of what I've just been shown, what I've just read before, but somebody else thought of that as a vampire. And then I went, like, it's great when people start taking, chances with things and playing with the elements and stuff. You get some really great stuff.
I love to see people subvert things. Do you know what I mean? But I love people take something that is a specific trope and just completely turn it on its head. So there's something completely different. But I still want the gore. Do you know?
Buffy
I'm,
the
I'm,
Vampire Slayer. That
I'm
was, that was a great, whoever decided, like, let's take the, the you know typically victimized, attractive, uh, you know female characters from vampire stories and make them, the ones who fight. Struck gold that day. So,
and I love like the camp side of it as well. I loved Hammer. I mean, I'm a big fan of Hammer, and I'm a horror and Tales of Unexpected and things like that, which is what I grew up with. And I love all those old Dracula films because they're so campy and fun. Do you know? And I loved Buffy, which is also kind of a very another take on vampires, but they are quite horrific in that TV show, actually.
they
Um,
can be. Oh yeah, I mean, that, like, yeah, we could talk all day about Buffy, but I mean, Spike
oh, I
and
love Buffy. Love,
and Angel Angelus. those are not good guys.
and I
They become sort
him.
of.
I mean, I love David Boreanaz in everything. I think he's a fantastic actor, but I preferred him as Angelus than Angel. Angel got on my nerves. Angelus was fabulous, and Spike is my favourite vampire
You're not
character. One of
the first one to say that
my
either. It's like I've heard a number of people, usually women, who as girls wound up watching Beauty and the Beast, which I
yeah,
love too. I saw that in the theater actually.
yeah,
But who
gorgeous story.
who've said that they were so into the Beast when he
Yeah,
was the Beast, and then as soon as he turned into a human, interest gone.
it's because it seemed less real. I don't know. As the Beast,
I agree.
he
It's
seemed
just
more
so funny
himself.
that that's. I don't know how that happens, but it does.
I don't know. Perhaps we all like a bad boy, really, Marcus. That doesn't
Or
we all?
I mean, it could be that. It could. I don't know. I mean, I was rather like Jessica Rabbit, and that's not real. I mean, that's as fake
Oh,
as
well,
you
she
can.
was gorgeous though.
True. She was drawn onto celluloid though by somebody from Disney, but yeah.
That's a fantastic film, isn't it? You Frame Roger Rabbit.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I love.
Yeah.
I haven't watched it for years.
There's certain examples of movies that, like, just there has never been an equal or anything even
No,
similar ever, and that's one of them.
one of them.
Another one, like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. There's never been another one of those. Yeah,
Right.
there's a ton. Yeah, I'll think of others later, I'm sure, but yeah, there's a bunch of them.
And she was married to a rabbit. She was married to a rabbit. Which is a bit weird. Let's be
because in,
honest.
because in cartoon world that makes sense somehow.
What are your favourite horror films? What kind of horror films do you like?
I love The Shining. That's just that's just it's one that, like, it's got such a if you look at the actual, stuff that happens, there's not it's funny, but there's actually not a lot, but it's a lot of atmosphere, it's a lot of build up, it's a lot of, just having, like, I love when you can take a very small cast of characters and just sort of it's more interesting than having 10 people on the screen, right?
It's a
That's why I
fast
love the Lighthouse too.
It's a fascinating study in the breakdown of a man's mind. Do you know, that's what it
Yeah,
really
yeah,
what it it's it's a really incredible, psychologically thrilling film. But
Cinematically incredible. Like I love Stanley Kubrick's work, and
yeah.
that's just one, like, probably the crown jewel of them, I think.
It's one of the
What
only
else
Stephen King films, and I love Stephen King. We both do, don't we? But I love Stephen King, but it's one of the only Stephen King films that I think I've ever watched more than once.
Yeah.
Apart from the TV series of Salem's Lot, because I was in love with David Soul when I was a kid.
Oh,
But you know, that's another reason, I think, really. But
yeah.
that's the only film I've ever watched twice, because I don't think they do a particularly good job of his books, really. But that one was different.
I've definitely seen Misery more than once. I've seen The Green Mile more than once. The Mist. Oh, actually, you know what?
Actually,
The Mist is one example where I think they actually improved a little bit, just at the end, because I believe even he said that he wished he had thought of the end of that film, because
it's better than the book.
Yeah, in the written version, it just kind of ends like a little ambiguously, like they leave the supermarket, and then I think they wind up at a hotel or something like that, and it's just kind of what'll happen next sort of thing. But in the in the movie, they definitely put a stamp on things, and it's terrible, but it's great. I remember, like, oh man, I mean, Revival, that's still messing with me, that book.
It's one of his better books, I think. And a lot with Misery, I've only seen the film once. I love Kathy Bates' portrayal in that, but I love the book. I
Yes, me too.
I'd rather read the book than watch the film. Right?
That's one I read multiple times, and I still try to sort of crack that nut. Like, what was it about this that got its hooks so into me, and how do I sort of do the same? Not exactly the same, but like, how do I do? Yeah,
she's such a fantastic character. She's just terrifying.
It's that quiet terror. It's that quiet bad. It's like, it's not somebody who's cackling or menacing somebody, but it's portrayed in a really, sadly, very horribly real way, in that I love you.
Yeah.
I wouldn't, this hurts me more than it hurts you kind of way. And I think that's actually probably it right there.
I love you so much that I'll kill you before I let you leave me. It's that kind of obsessive love that,
sadly, something I'm sure many people are familiar with.
He would hate.
Yeah.
Kind of completely suffocating love. But oh god, she played that so well. It's such a beautifully written book. My favourite, but I have to say, my favourite book, if I had to pick one, is 221163.
Still haven't read that one.
Just because at the time it was the gateway book to him for fantasy, right? Because he started with pure horror when he was stoned, didn't he, practically? And then it's kind of, that one is kind of horror, sci-fi, fantasy. It's kind of almost a fantasy. And that led on to the other stuff. I'm not so keen on his later stuff, if I'm honest. But just a completely unique story. And I was completely I couldn't put it down. And that's a sign of a good book for me. If I don't
I agree, because like, even Revival is, I mean, it's not page cover to cover horror, but it starts in such a way that, like, you get to know, sort of not to plug my own thing here, but sort of in a way like I did with You Can't Take It With You, is you want to get to know the person first, and then see what happens, right? And that's really where the payoff in that book is that when you finally get to the last 100 pages of Revival, it's just like, okay, I get it now. Like, I see where this was going, and it's terrible. Yeah,
it's completely compelling. It pulls you in.
Yeah.
And your book does too. It pulls you in, and you want to know. You become instantly fascinated by this man. What has he seen? What has he done? What has he lived through? What has he experienced? You become fascinated by him Do you know what I mean? So you want to know everything about him, and it's an excellent book,
And
darling.
that's kind of what I, hope to do. Like, I thought just by, if somebody was 90 years old and they had nothing to say or do, then what interest, who cares, right? What happens to them next, right? So, and that's something I've learned also just from talking to people who are, older than me, is that they have a lot to say if you just sit down and listen. If they'll tell you things. I mean, my grandfather had all, like, he never didn't have a story. You know what I mean? So when you actually listen to a lot of that, it's like, you might not always, like, there may not always be a huge point to them, but it's just funny what people will remember and take from their lives, and what'll come up sort of, randomly and whatnot. And it's just, yeah, there's value in that.
I've been very fortunate. I spent 20 years of my life traveling, and I've done a lot of jobs, and I've been very, very lucky. But my neighbour next door, she's in her 80s, Ruby, and she's lived here her whole life. She's never left Devon. She's never left specifically where I live, Tiverton. She's lived here the whole of her life. And she is, hands down, the most fascinating person you've ever spoken to. And
It can happen, right?
she's around me. She's like
Yeah.
she reminds me of, she's like the Miss Marple of Devon. Do you know what I
Oh
mean?
boy,
She knows everybody's little secrets, everybody's ins and outs. She's completely
great.
fascinating to speak to, because she's lived this what most people would think of, a very insular kind of boring life, where she grew up, she got married, she had a child, and that, but it's a life well lived. Do you know what I mean?
And that's, that's something I look back on too, is because, I mean, I never lived in one place, like, from the age of
Me neither.
about 8 years old, on. And it's kind of a mixed thing, because, things happen in that time, and because of moving around a lot, that still actually even still show up today. And you kind of go, oh, I wish, or maybe not I wish, but just like, what would it have been like if I just stayed in one place? And then you think, well, then, things would probably have been boring. I wouldn't have been, I wouldn't have become, who I am, and learned to navigate challenges and things like that. And there is that, but then then you see somebody like that who's made the best of it, and you go, okay, well, maybe I have no idea what to expect then.
Content with her life. They've got a little vegetable patches in the garden. They've got, and her husband passed away 2 weeks after mine. But they just, she just has a really simple life. She gets up, she poodles in a garden.
Yeah.
She just, I think she's far more content than I am. And I've spent a long period of my life never being in one city for more than a week. So I think she's far more content with her life than I am. So I don't know. Who knows what the answer is to that?
It's tough, right? Like, it's always, it always seems like we should be, looking at something else, or going somewhere else, or whatever, if we're not happy where we are. But when you actually really stop and think for a minute of what you do have, it can be quite great, when you stop and take a really hard look at it. But, it's not always, it's not always perfect. There's always something that, you could change, but sometimes better the devil, other than, hey, why don't I try moving to China? I mean, that'll come with its own thing, or
no, don't.
or Mexico, or even just the next town. I mean, I've thought about, like, honestly, I mean, I've never really been crazy about living where I do. It's fine, but I mean, even just from, like, a climate standpoint, it's very dry here. It's very, it's trying to think of if there's, like, where on earth would even, or where in England would be even roughly comparable to it. But to give you an idea, it's sort of like the roughly Colorado, I guess, of Canada, sort of. So I mean, it's not near a lot of water, and I really like where I came from. There's ponds, there's lakes, there's everything just everywhere. So I mean, and I got a reminder of this when I went to Los Angeles just a few months ago. But just how much I love being near water.
Water.
I
Yeah.
like for my mind, but also just my body. Like you can tell, you can feel like it, you can just feel a change, you know, it's like you can breathe properly or something like that. But in order to do that, I would have to leave here, leave family and friends, start somewhere new where I don't, you know, it comes with its own, you know,
Yeah.
everything comes with a,
Yeah.
this is kind of, you know, this is what we're talking about. Everything comes with a cost, you know, whatever it is. So if you're willing to pay it, then that's great. And maybe I am, maybe I won't. I don't know.
I mean, I live on an island, so you never, even in the middle of the country, you're never more than a couple of hours from the sea.
There you go.
So it's kind of, yeah, I love being near. I don't live near the water. I live in the countryside now, but I'm literally half an hour away if I
Yeah.
needed to get to the sea. So it's different kind of thing, isn't it? Now, you just posted about what's coming up. So you got the next Miracle Sin too.
Yes.
So you're looking at doing something similar to Grey Noise. Did I read that?
Oh, it was just well, it wasn't. Yeah, I labeled it as spiritual sibling, which is just a term I came up with.
Mhm.
But I guess, you know, for anyone who read Grey Noise, obviously there's a lot of existential, nihilistic.
I loved it.
Yeah,
It was great fun.
but it's sort of that type of feel rather than it being something that's directly successive to Grey Noise. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I guess that's just kind of how I see it. But yeah, it's not meant to be. There's actually, I think there's a term, a spiritual sequel. So it's like
Oh,
not one that is a direct sequel. I'm trying to think of an example here, actually.
you kind of have the same kind
Just
of feel.
yeah,
So the same.
yeah. Like I think, well, it happens a lot in video games. You know, a studio will put out like Fallout is a spiritual sequel to. I think there was another one called or I forget now, but
I don't.
but yeah, something of that, yeah, of that nature, right? Like or how I think, yeah, just the same type of story, but not directly connecting
Connected.
to it. Yeah,
Makes sense.
and
Been
yeah.
chatting for over an hour, Marcus, so we probably should tie it up because it's
Oh,
9
if
at night here and I need to go to bed
no problem.
soon.
Okay.
I want to read. I want to lie in bed, covered in cats, and read.
Covering cat. Yeah.
About people
Mine's
just everybody says to me, you should go out more, Sharon. You should go out, and I'm disabled, so it's hard for me. But everyone's like, you should go out more. I'm like, why would I leave my house? Everything I love is in here.
yeah.
All my books,
There's
my
nothing
food.
out. You know,
Yeah.
out. If out was so great, we wouldn't have spent thousands of years perfecting in the way I don't. So just don't stay in. It's better.
Let's just look at the. I'll just have a quick look at the comments. So, Dog Vondry says she's intrigued by the Grey Noise
Ah,
spiritual
yes.
sequel, spiritual thing. And
Oh,
Lee,
yeah.
love your name, Lee. I can say that all day. Can't wait to read more of your books. Keep them coming.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
So,
And then someone has listed pretty much every favorite Stephen King book of mine right there. Needful Things. That's one that doesn't get mentioned near enough, but it's starting to, I think, because people have discovered how great it is. But what's that?
God, such a good book.
It's, I mean, if you've ever, I mean, and I've lived in small towns, I mean, even though Calgary's big, I still kind of see it as a bit of a small town in a lot of ways. But if you've ever lived in a small town and just know how people can, you know, be there and, you know, turn on each other and you know, it's like every little molehill gets turned into a mountain or anything, and just what can ensue because of it. That's that's a great example.
Such a good film. Actually, I watched that film the other day. I don't think I've ever seen that film before.
Right.
And
I've seen it. Maybe, the one.
I thought it was all right. Actually, it was okay. It's not as good as the book, but
no. But
that kind of, you know, the ability to turn people turn people against themselves and their neighbours. Really, really well.
It says something. I mean, that says something about human nature too. If it doesn't take too much to push people into that sort of chaos, it clearly was something that seems inevitable. You know, it seems like it was just a matter of time. But then along comes this one bloke with a shop with everything you've ever wanted in it, and just starts poking at everybody.
And I absolutely love Salem's Lot and
Yeah.
Pet Cemetery.
Oh, I love. Oh,
I mean, I read Carrie when it was released in 1977. I was 8. Says a lot about me, really, that I think. We didn't really have anything. I mean, I love Point Horror now. I really love Point Horror and Goosebumps, but I was too old for it when it first came out. It was in the 90s and I was an adult. But you didn't have that when in the 70s when I was a kid.
yeah.
You went straight from Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys to Stephen King and John Graham Masterton and James Herbert.
One, I forget which. I think it was the first one, but I think the first Hardy Boys book was, I think, the first book, like real actual novel that I read ever.
Mine was a Nancy Drew one called The Hidden Staircase, and
I know.
I still have the original copy.
Wow.
The first
Keep that safe.
and it's yeah, I loved Nancy Drew. I wanted to be Nancy Drew. I wanted to go to big manor houses and find secret passages, and I loved that kind of adventure story. I still love it.
Every time I see a bookcase, I'm very disappointed in knowing that there's likely no secret passage behind it. But I'll find one day. I will find one.
There should be a book that moves, that opens it. I mean,
that's what I mean. That's why all the books wind up on the floor, because I'm testing them and getting frustrated.
Anyway, my love.
People in the library know me well.
Yeah. This is Marcus's most recent book. You Can't Take It With You. It's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Winter Christmas Carol meets Oliver meets Dracula. Grab it, my friend.
Meets Eyes Wide Shut a little bit.
A little bit. There's a little bit of sexiness in there, but it's also viscerally quite brutal.
Yes.
Sue says she had tons of Agatha Christie. I love Agatha Christie too. I'm a huge Christie fan.
I've still never read. I have much answering to do with a friend of mine who's a big Agatha Christie fan, and I think I have Death on the Nile, but I've still not read it. But I will. I promise.
The best one.
I have all these promises.
The best one to read, in my opinion, is And Then They Went On.
I don't even think I mean, some of them I know roughly what they're about, like Murder on the Orient Express and whatnot, but I don't even think I know what that one is about.
So it's about 10 strangers that are invited to an island by this, mystery millionaire, very deserted. They get left there with just a basic staff, and then a record plays telling each of them what crime they've committed. And then they slowly start getting killed, one after the other.
That sounds very like quite a few different murder mysteries, and that was probably the original, the genesis of it. Yeah, like that actually sounds like The Glass Onion, if you've seen that one.
Yeah,
with Daniel Craig. Yeah,
the Glass Onion, and like the other one, the first one as well, a direct rip-off. But they're done in a very different way, which is quite
well, though, I'll say that much.
Yeah, they are done well. But everybody on the island dies, and nobody can get on the island or off the island. So who killed them?
Well, can color me intrigued.
It's yeah, in my opinion, it's her greatest book, and I've read all of them. I have every book she ever wrote.
Making a mental note here. Actually, I'll make a real note. After this, I'll go to Goodreads and add it.
It's yeah, and it's only probably 300 pages. It's not a big book, but yeah, it's absolutely brilliant. But yeah, she was the queen of the locked room, closed circle mystery.
Locked. Okay. I've never done a locked room. I want to try one once, just to or not a read. Like actually going to a real locked room and just how I do. I'm not too confident, but at least just to try and hopefully.
And good fun.
Yeah. If I'm with a group of people who can figure things out, quickly. Like I can figure them out, but quickly. That's the problem. Like I can do math, but I cannot do it quickly.
Great fun, and they don't leave you locked in there if you don't solve it. They do let you out,
I would.
but that's
Well,
not
that's
the.
good. That's comforting.
Well, you never know, do you? Life is a real horror.
There's
You've got to check these.
there's a horror story. Think about that. Like, oh well, I guess the timer's run out.
Okay, now you get evaporated.
Yeah.
So,
Or you just don't get let out. Imagine that. You have to solve it, or you're in there with what you
there's
got. No
a story
food,
there, isn't there?
no. Oh. Hmm. 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 I don't know what this was. What is that? It's me rubbing.
That's just a little worm just digging. Anyway, it's been lovely to speak to you, my love.
Oh, thank you. You too.
Thank you so much. I consider you one of my friends. I'm so grateful for your
Same.
support here. It's been a difficult year for me, and I'm very, very grateful for
Me
you
too.
keeping in touch.
And you've been. I think we've been helpful to each other, and let's just continue to be okay.
We
I
will.
know. Life sucks, so let's show it who's boss. I guess that's
That's right.
the point.
Everybody go out and buy this. It's brilliant. And I will speak to you very soon, Mr. Hawke.
You bet.
You
Thank you very much. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.